take the very concept of creativity as such. Now, if we don't understand what this issue of creativity is, then we will usually try to find some kind of an empirical structure and try to explain this phenomenon as an empirical structure. But when you go into the creativity of the human mind, the creative powers of the human mind, which are actually creative powers, the human mind is able to direct us to do things that the universe doesn't do otherwise. And that's what we should be looking for. And we've had mankind's progress has generally been based, as far as we know it, true creativity is based on something quite outside the sense perceptual empirical kind of sense entirely. And it is the creative. We actually create, as the universe itself does. We create forms which we didn't know existed, which we had not experienced. We've discovered their existence by the imagination. And that is the principle of metaphor, as distinct from, and the problem is, for me, is I'm so familiar with this thing, but we have come into a time where the population in general, the educated population so-called, has no conception of what metaphor is. They assume it's something. They assume it's an artistic touch or a creative touch, something exceptional, a personal choice. But when you look at the history of mankind, you find that the principle of metaphor, as it's truly defined, is something outside what we otherwise know as empirical experience. And no matter how many experimental discoveries we make, we still have that same problem. There's something else. What is the property of mind? What is the principle of creativity of minds? That's metaphor. And all the greatest art, the greatest compositions in art, all reflect that. And in order to solve the kinds of problems we're trying to trace in terms like the Crab Nebula implication, which is enormous, we still are stuck with the thing. Are we going to the real direction of the real solution? Or have we not lost it because our educated population, including scientifically educated population, has lost connection with the actual meaning of metaphor? No. They don't understand it. They think of it as something like a likeness of something, but it's not. And this goes to, the other problem is that most people, like economists, are stupid. And the more successful they are, the more stupid they are. Because by being successful, they become stubbornly convinced that they're right. But we find that they never discover anything. The accepted economist, you get some guy who makes a freak discovery, he doesn't know what he's done, and he may be right in the short term. But the typical standard forecaster, economic forecaster, is a jerk. He always tries to mathematically derive a statistical model and relies upon statistical standards, and he's always wrong. And it's in this area, the area of creativity, human creativity, as such, which is not really attacked. It's not understood. It's not searched for. The very idea of metaphor, as it was understood in more classical periods, in terms of the 20th century, 19th and 20th century, especially the 20th century, we've lost it. We no longer know what metaphor means. And that is the lost area, which finally we're going to have to get to, because what we're looking for is the principle of creativity, which distinguishes the human being from other perceptual, sensitive kinds of organisms. The human mind is different, and that's what we've got to get to.
Sounds like a fun place to get to.
It is a very fun place. I've been working at it for a long time, and I've had wars, especially on the question of economics. Why do people not understand economy? Why are all economic forecasters essentially systemically idiots? That's been the record. You have some people who have insight, just like scientific insight, and they will suspect there's something which is not yet on their agenda. and will suspect that maybe they should put it on their agenda. And so they'll take a dive and try to use that to say, well, maybe this will explain it. The evidence is not there. It's not empirical evidence yet. But it's a sense that since nothing else explains this, maybe this would explain it. And you find that most of the discoveries we get are people who do just exactly that. The typical scientist goes outside, and if he can't find an answer, he will recognize he hasn't found it, and he will say, well, where's the next place we can try looking? Maybe we'll find it in the next place. That works, but there's less of that now, and now you have a society which is not creative. It's not productive. When people were productive and inventing things and building things and making things and designing things, they were coming into the area of metaphor. What is metaphor for them at that point? And they experiment, they test, and they come up with new divisions. Now we no longer produce. Production has almost ceased in the United States. Who's working in producing anything? Our entire industry, just a narrow, small, dwindling part of the whole economy, is still producing anything. And therefore, I would say that on the basis of my success in economic forecasting, it's still the same thing. People always try to draw conclusions based on the data given to them so far. You never get the sense of metaphor. And everything I do in terms of forecasting is based on really the principle of metaphor. That there is a principle of mind, which is the true creativity. And what's happened, our educational system, our habits have prohibited us from using that technology. And it's a long story. I've been through this, of course, for a number of 9 decades of life. And you get a sense, this is where creativity lies. And you'll find that, for example, in the question, the way mind is treated we've treated it already here. The concept of mind is based on this. For Max Planck, for example, Wolfgang Köhler, their concept of mind is unique, and most people in that field don't even know what they're talking about in terms of what they're saying. But I would say that the concept of mind, as expressed and shared by Köhler and by Planck, and similar ways of thinking by Einstein, which is a related kind of mind. This is where the truth lies. This is the area of metaphor. And metaphor is simply the process by which you finally, as Kepler did, you come up with an experiment, and you use a metaphor to define the experiment. What's that actually a metaphor? That's the discovery. That method of metaphor was Kuhse's method, and the method of his associates. That was actually the way the mind of Leibniz worked. Same way. So it's these great scientists you will probably find is actually a great classical artist. It's the ability to think in classical artistic terms that enables him to leap above the guy who is playing with facts, just facts, deductive. And it's tough to get people to recognize that. And I just sit back and don't sit back and tell them that they're wrong. And then they find out that I was right in saying that they were wrong. And that's exactly how it works. It's the principle of metaphor is the true principle of creativity, of human creativity. And it poses questions, what is the nature of the universe? In other words, can we continue to argue that sense perception gives us the evidence to understand the universe? Sense perception gives us questions to be answered. It does not necessarily give us answers. And that's where we are. And the method of creativity works, but there are fewer and fewer people who practice it. My hope is we could get a restart on this one.
And that's a political question, too. Because obviously you look at, if you think, what kind of society fosters that? What kind of economic projects foster that? In other words, it's not just a fight in itself. in terms of like a way of, it's not only a cultural fight, it goes together with the political one.
Well, you take the case of the stupidity of people who are supporting Obama. They don't like him. Many of them fear him. They hate him, well, often, but they will say, yes, but. We'll have to see if it works out. And right now we know exactly that we're headed for thermonuclear war, which may be an extinction of the human species. And somebody wants to sit back there and say, let's see how it works out. Or others just don't know. They have no grip, and therefore they just say, don't talk to me about it. I'm not involved. Don't involve me in this. We're in trouble, deep trouble. And that's because the powers of human mind aren't recognized. We're trained to deductive methods, and deduction is what's killing us now. That's why people become stupid. They just don't react to reality. And they just say, okay, well, it's a gamble, but I think I can trust this. I think I can trust this guy. You see this pathetic thing of the parade, of the Republican parade, which is compared to the same thing now. But my view is that the solution of all these problems lies in the domain of what we call metaphor. And we have to go back to what was done with Cusa and others, and we get fragmentary expressions of this going into the 20th century. We keep plugging ahead sometimes, but we're in danger. And I don't think until we get a clear understanding of metaphor among more people that you're going to get much improvement.
Sounds like a job to do.
It is a job to do. I can do it quite well and put it together, but the point is how do you explain ideas which other people don't have words for?
Yep.